That's a safety hazard.
Yeah, more than likely a safety hazard, but what kind of hazard is it? Now, the biggest mistake I see in the hazard assessment process is the incorrect identification of hazards. You know what? I've seen some terrible hazard assessments in my time. I've seen some very good ones, but I've also seen some very poor attempts at training and explaining the process. It is imperative to get the hazard identification process right the first time. If you don't get it right the first time, a cascading effect will occur. Incorrect identification will lead to incorrect assessment for probable consequence and probable occurrence, which of course will lead to wrong prioritization, and in turn, you won't implement the correct controls, or they likely won't be adequate. It's imperative. You have to get it right the first time. If you don't do the hazard identification and assessment process properly, it's going to be a wasted effort. At minimum, it's going to be a waste of time for those that are reading it and trying to implement it. Worst case scenario, though, bad things are going to happen to good workers because the hazards were not properly controlled. It's important. First off, understand what a hazard is. And there's a lot of different definitions out there. The one I use quite often is, and to put it into its simplest terms, a hazard is something that has a negative effect on anyone or anything it interacts with, having the potential to cause injury or illness to people, damage to property and or assets, and or harm to the environment. Governments really streamline those definitions and make them very concise. Now, the Canadian Centre for Occupational Health and Safety here in Canada says this. They say a hazard is any source of potential damage, harm, or adverse health effects on something or someone. The government of Alberta, where I live, they've even tried to make it simpler, and they've said a hazard means a situation, condition, or thing that may be dangerous to health and safety. Both very concise, but it's the ambiguous terms of source or something or thing that likely cause the confusion. A couple of bad examples that I've come across, both looking at hazard assessments and having to look at some attempts at training. And they're both benign, really. Stairs and stepladders. Stairs are a building component, and stepladders, for want of a better term, they're basically a tool. But I've seen workers label them as hazards, and trainers use them as examples as hazards in training sessions. Now, possibly the first is because of the second. The workers are labeling them as hazards because they've been trained that way. It's a chicken and egg thing, maybe. I don't know.
It's only because you're doing it wrong.
A hazard is tied to a task. That's the first thing that you have to remember. It's tied to a task or a worker function, if you will. Say, like unloading deliveries at a warehouse. A worker is unloading deliveries at a warehouse. That's their task. So how do stairs and ladders become a hazard? Either they are associated with tasks or they're not. Unless they become part of the worker tasks, they're not a hazard. So let's say, for instance, that the warehouse worker carries stock downstairs, or carries their deliveries downstairs. Now we might be getting somewhere because the task that they're performing is now involving the stairs. Now, second thing is hazards are neither actions or consequence. The mistake people often make is they confuse the action or the consequence for the identified hazard. Now, they say that stairs are a tripping hazard or ladders are a falling hazard. No, neither case. Ladders, when they're doing nothing, are doing nothing. Stairs, when there's nobody on them, are just stairs. Falling and tripping are actions. But the other mistake that's made is they confuse the consequence with the hazard. The broken bones, the scrapes on the knees, or whatever.
Ow, my knee!
Those are consequences. So the tripping and falling is an action. The consequence is the broken bones or landing on the ground. What might be hazardous for the worker on the stairs if he or she is carrying boxes up or down the stairs is, well, yeah, tripping, but from what? If your hazard assessment was to say tripping hazards may be present from broken stair components such as stair treads or stair nosing, now we're getting somewhere. So yes, there might be a tripping hazard present because of broken components. Now, the third thing that you have to remember is there has to be control. Yes, there has to be a control for the hazard. If you're performing tasks and there's no way to control the hazards, then you shouldn't be performing the tasks. You might want to look at elimination then. In this case, you could use some administrative controls, like say, for instance, you could put as an administrative control a workplace inspection program and schedule, a preventive maintenance program, and a hazard reporting system. And of course, there's likely a few others that you could add in there. So the stairs are not a hazard, but they can be a source of the hazard depending on the condition or state, and of course the worker interacting with them. Now the same goes for step ladders. Yes, injuries can occur, but once again, injuries are a consequence. Falls are the action leading to those injuries, like an injury like a broken wrist or something, say for instance. What could be the hazard with the stepladder? It could be something as simple as improper use or setting it up on uneven ground. This, of course, produces a tipping hazard, not a tripping hazard, tipping hazard, because the center of gravity is adversely affected and there's no stability for the center of gravity. Or broken components could lead to a ladder failure, which could also result in a fall. I'm not going to do the rest of the work here.
I'd like your input.
Let's just for fun, let's try this out. Leave me a comment down below in the comment section. Leave me a comment recommending how you might control both or even just pick one of the hazards. Incorrect setup or broken components. You know what? You can use whatever type of controls you wish. Now let's remember those three things. Number one is hazards are part of a task. It's like that tree falling in the forest thing. If there's nobody around to hear it, does it make a sound? So yes, the hazard may exist, but it's not necessarily a hazard until it has the possibility of interacting with the worker. The other thing is, it has to be something that causes the action to lead to the consequence. Don't confuse the action and the consequence as the hazard. And the third thing, there has to be a way to control it. You cannot control a fall. You cannot control a consequence. But you can apply something within the hierarchy of controls to prevent the action and consequence. When you use that hierarchy of controls, it makes the work safer. So let's, just for fun, let's keep this going. Leave me examples in the comments of an identified hazard and a sample control that could be used. Now do me a favor, keep it nice. This is a learning channel, not a condescending channel. Okay? And hey, if you haven't done so yet, why don't you do me a favor and just click that subscribe button down below, ding the bell, you'll get notified of content when new content goes up in the channel. And I really appreciate it if you'd give me a like. And if you didn't like it, well, let me know. But leave me a comment. Let me know why. Now, until we see each other again, and I really hope we do, don't just think about safety. Don't just talk about safety, but be a safety influencer. Be a leader and provoke safety wherever you are. Take care. Bye for now.